Hello and good evening, everybody. And first and foremost, I'd like to say that I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. And tonight, I am going to be getting back to the world of album rant. And as you know from the title of the video and from last week, tonight is episode 66 of Album Rant. And I did say I was going to do something very big and very momentous for episode 66. And I thought it would be very appropriate and very fitting to return to the world of King Diamond and Satan. And I am going to focus tonight on a band called Merciful Fate that he was the unofficial leader of in the early 80s. And I'm going to talk about their second album entitled Don't Break the Oath. And that is what you see right there. Now, it has been a very long time since I have talked about these guys. It's been over a year. So obviously, I am going to have to catch a few of y'all up and bring you up to speed, so I might as well. Well, anyways, King Diamond, his real name is Kim Benedicts Peterson, I want to say. And he is a Danish heavy metal vocalist, or Danish black metal vocalist, if I want to be technically correct. And he originated in the early 80s, and he was very much in the underground scene in the sense that he did not really have a lot of widespread popularity. He was definitely not a household name, and he definitely was not in the mainstream. But he was always pulling in musician after musician, and he was recording a long series of demos, and some of those have been released on various compilations, such as Black Rose 20 years ago or something, and Return of the Vampire. Well, again, the band that he was trying to put together went through a variety of names, such as the aforementioned Black Rose. It was called the Brats at one point, and then eventually it was settled on Merciful Fate. And Merciful Fate would be active initially from around 1982 to around 1985. Now, again, after going through a very revolving door of members, eventually a somewhat stable lineup was established in 1982 of King Diamond on lead vocals, Hank Shermann on lead guitar, Michael Denner on lead guitar, Timi the Grabber Hansen, may he rest in peace, on bass guitar, and then Kim Ruzz on the drums. And they came out and they produced their very first studio release, which was actually an EP of only 4 songs in 1982. And it included A Corpse Without Soul, which was an absolute fanatical and insane song, but it was absolutely amazing, okay? I mean, the lyrical content of these guys, of this artist, they are very much not in the mainstream. The music sounds very much like standard rock and roll or heavy metal, at least at that point it did. But the vocals and the lyrical content was beyond messed up. It delved very, very highly into Satanism and sacrifices and witches and covens, and it was just insane. I mean, some of these lyrics from A Corpse Without Soul, I mean, we have, it was all dressed up like a corpse in a wedding dress. Ah, black wings on my naked back. And yeah, that is another thing about King Diamond. He is definitely an acquired taste in the sense that his vocal style can go from a very deep and dark growl 1 second to a very high and ear-piercing falsetto the next second. It is not for everybody, and in fact, it was not for me initially, but it grew on me, and I eventually came to respect and admire his vocal style, and today, he is one of my favorite artists ever, okay? But other songs from that EP, of course, I mentioned A Corpse Without Soul. We had Doomed by the Living Dead. We had Nuns Have No Fun. I mean, upon a cross, a nun will be hanged. She was raped by an evil man. Jeez, that is so wrong. And then we had, of course, Devil Eyes, which has a phenomenal drum intro, a very brooding rhythm, and of course we have King going, Devil Eyes! Rise! I take you to hell. You're inside my spell. In Lucifer's mirror, well, I am his killer. Oh! And yeah, it's pretty amazing, but at the same time, incredibly disturbing. But that did not stop them. In fact, that kind of put their foot in the door until the next year, 1983, they released their very first full-fledged album, which was entitled Melissa. Now, you're probably asking yourself, who is Melissa? Melissa was a witch. She was prosecuted and sentenced to death by a priest, and he burned her alive at the stake. Well, her lover, who I guess was King Diamond, he swore revenge on the priest. He swore to avenge her in the name of hell, and it's kind of a satanic ballad, if that makes any sense. And I gotta admit, it was rather creative. Now, some of the other songs that were on the Melissa album, we also had Evil. We had Curse of the Pharaohs. We had Come, Come into My Coven and Become Lucifer's Child. We had Black Funeral. We had the multi-part prog number or prog metal number, Satan's Fall, which is such an insane and demonic number, but man, it just works so well. And that album was an absolute hit. And so, of course, a follow-up was coming the next year. And that is what leads me into tonight's review, their second studio album, third total release, entitled Don't Break the Oath. And as you can see right there from the cover, he is not leaving anything to the imagination. Subtlety is not going to be his thing tonight. So let's see what we have here on the back. We have no gatefold. Yes, right there we have some upside down crosses. Very fitting. This is not the kind of thing most kids probably wanted their parents to see. But King Diamond is right there on lead and backing vocals. He is in the shadows for some reason, but it's all right. Over here, we have Hank Shermann on lead guitar. We have Michael Denner on lead guitar. We have Timi Grabber Hansen on bass guitar, and there is Kim Ruzz on the drums. Now, this is not an original press. This is a remastered version, and in fact, if we open this up real quickly, of course, right there we have some lyrics, but I actually have the orange edition right there. I guess that is meant to represent the fires of hell. I'm guessing that's a logical conclusion. But yeah, very special edition right here, the orange edition. Now, moving back here, let's get this back inside. Let's talk about these songs themselves. Now, one thing that I didn't quite mention earlier, the music, or maybe I did, I can't remember, but the music on those first two releases, the Merciful Fate EP and Melissa, the music itself sounds like traditional heavy metal. It sounds like something that might come on the radio. It sounds like something that may be, kind of an upbeat, mainstream, song that many people may be familiar with. Well, again, that is the initial perception until King starts singing, and then everything just goes off the rails, okay? But the music itself did not sound evil on those first two releases. The music sounds very evil on Don't Break the Oath. So I'm guessing Hank Shermann, who wrote the majority of music, kind of caught on to what kind of band he was in. But anyways, it all starts off with a dangerous meeting. And this one just comes swinging right out of the gate. There is some nice dual guitar work from both Hank Shermann and Michael Denner until eventually the entire thing just stops and we have this very crunching riff that goes dun 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 dun, and man, the whole thing just sounds so evil but so slick at the same time. It's amazing. And then, of course, King starts coming in, and man, the atmosphere between the vocals and the music is just so completely on point. And I think what the lyrical content is about is a group of people who are performing a seance. They are attempting to summon the spirits of hell, and what they eventually found out is when they mess with the powers of hell, They end up being cursed or something, or damned to hell, which may not be what they were about initially. I don't know, but that does seem to be what it's about. Now, something very interesting. A lot of times songs follow the traditional verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus arrangement. Merciful Fate kind of does some different things every now and then. I mean, we have the initial verse, then we have a chorus. Time was standing still, it's a dangerous meeting. They're gonna get themselves killed. They're gonna get themselves killed. And then he does go into another verse after that. But then after that second verse, things kind of go off in a different direction. And I gotta say, we have a very nice interlude in the middle where things just kind of slow down and get very, very dark and brooding. And there's a bell that's being chimed in the background, which just adds to the atmosphere and just works so well. I mean, it's kind of like dong, 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 dong. And I just cannot recommend A Dangerous Meeting enough. Love that song. Then we come to the second track, which is Nightmare. And this one starts out with a very good bass intro. And, it sounds completely awesome. Timi Hansen was a great bassist. Heck, all of these guys were great. King has always surrounded himself with some really phenomenal talent. And again, this one is really heavy, but it's also really, really dark. And again, the lyrics are just completely, totally bonkers and off the wall. I mean, it starts out very, very, very fast, but then it kind of goes into an interlude for a little bit. And King's kind of trading off his very high falsetto and his very low, brooding growl. But then eventually, after all of that, there is something that comes up that is actually very interesting. It's a very interesting approach. He starts playing the harpsichord. Now, you might think that's going to make things sound a little bit more upbeat, a little more poppy, and a little bit less demonic. Oh, no. This harpsichord, again, just adds the very evil themes that this song is all about, and it's just so incredible. Then we have another section where it kind of picks up again until eventually things just go completely off the rail and King is just screaming in his falsetto. He's just going, "You are insane! You are insane!" And then we have the final line. "You're only living on borrowed time from your fate. Such an amazing song. It is so awesome. But then things just kind of slow down for a bit and the song ends. Nightmare is an incredibly underrated track, and I really wish he would play this one more. But then we have Desecration of Souls. Starts out again very slow. Down, 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 down. Stay away, white magician, young lovers and mourning wife. You're not welcome on our land, so I speak for the dead. And then things just start picking up a bit, and it actually gets a little bit more upbeat than you might be thinking. I mean, the song is, of course, still very, very evil. This whole album is evil. But it's like, this song actually originated from a demo that they did back in the early days, and it was initially called On a Night of Full Moon, which can be found on the Return of the Vampire compilation. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty amazing song. It's got a very groovy rhythm to it, and again, the beat, the rhythm really just sell this, and I think it's a really definite classic. But then we have the last song from side one, Night of the Unborn. And again, just like A Dangerous Meeting, this one comes out swinging. The very first thing we hear is this crunching electric guitar riff. Wow, 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 wow. And yeah, the whole thing is very, very fast and very, very crunching. I just cannot get over once again how talented Hank Shermann and Michael Denner are. I cannot believe they are not more widely recognized in the heavy metal community, but they definitely need to be. Overall, Night of the Unborn is a little bit weaker than what came before it, but it's still a very, very great track. It's a little bit more traditional in the sense that it's not really as proggy as some of the other stuff that is on this album, in the sense that, we'll have a verse and a chorus, a little interlude, and then a conclusion. But, still, the whole thing is very fast, it's very crunching, very electric, and of course, as per usual, very evil. But what is my favorite from side one? It's either A Dangerous Meeting or Nightmare. Tonight, I am going with A Dangerous Meeting, but Nightmare is a very definite contender. And so that concludes side one. Now we come to side number two, and it starts off with The Oath, which I guess is the unofficial title track from this album. Now, spoiler warning in case you don't already know this or haven't already figured this out by this point, The Oath is to Satan. Was there ever any doubt, okay? This thing starts out really scary and very atmospheric. The intro kind of reminds me of the Black Sabbath title track, where, it starts out very moody, very medieval, and very gothic before it starts picking up. Well, this definitely takes the atmosphere that was established on that Black Sabbath title track, and it cranks it up to 11. This intro is flat out disturbing. This intro is flat out eerie, and it's definitely a very, very scary intro. Even I get a little uneasy whenever I hear it, and that's actually really saying something. But then an organ comes in, interesting approach, and then King comes in and he says his opening sermon. By the symbol of the Creator, I swear henceforth to be a faithful servant of his most puissant archangel, the Prince Lucifer, whom the Creator has designated as his legion and Lord of this world. Amen. And then after that, it just slowly fades out and the band starts coming in and they just again come out swinging. Down, 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 down. And it's incredibly ferocious and incredibly fast. Something significant about The Oath. This, from what I have gathered, I think this is the very first time that King has written both the lyrics and the music by himself. And I can actually kind of see that because Hank Shermann, I can actually recognize his songwriting or his music writing, at least back during this era. He had a very distinct style to it, and The Oath doesn't really have that. But that's not to say the music is bad or anything. The music is still incredibly ferocious and awesome. But it is kind of missing the little Hank Shermann punch to it, if that makes any sense or anything. But yes, this thing, again, is not a verse-chorus song. This is a prog number. I guess this is the counterpart to Satan's Fall from the Melissa album. But man, King is just doing some really insane stuff with his falsetto. I'm definitely going to butcher this, but I'm going to do the best I can with it. There is one point where he goes, ooh, 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 and it's just so incredibly crazy. But I still love every second of it, okay? Now, again, some of these lyrics are still incredibly blasphemous. It starts out with, I deny Jesus Christ, the deceiver. Jeez. You do not believe in subtlety, or King Diamond does not believe in subtlety at all. He even says, I will kiss the goat at one point. Just laying it on pretty thick, aren't you? But yeah, the song kind of meanders and goes from segment to segment to segment, and each segment kind of brings something different to the table. But again, they all flow together very, very nicely. That was one of the complaints I had about some of the songs on Melissa, especially at the sound of the Demon Bell and the title track. Those are both prog numbers, and they both have these various segments, but I didn't think the segments really complemented themselves very well. I feel like they just wrote some riffs and just put them all together. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case here because, like I said, each segment blends into the next one very well, and I feel like all of these different sections were written with the intention that they make up one complete piece, one complete number. But yes, as it was in the beginning, henceforth and forever shall be, a world without end. Amen. Wow, that just happened. King Diamond just officially pledged his allegiance to Satan. Just came right out and did it. Alright, so now we come to the next song called Gypsy. And this one also just starts right off the bat. We have an opening little beat, and then King just goes, and this one is a little bit slower, a little bit more brooding than maybe some of the other stuff on this album. But that doesn't mean it's not momentous, to say the least. This one was written by King Diamond and Michael Denner, so once again, I don't think Hank Shermann has a writing credit on this one, but it's kind of a silly song if you think about it. I mean, there's one part where King goes, "Oh wow, wow," and it's, again, probably one of the more upbeat songs from this album, but still, it's very momentous nonetheless. It's only about 3 minutes or so this one's very, very simplistic. Now, I do kind of feel like Gypsy was a precursor to a song that would come about a few years later on his first solo album called Fatal Portrait, and the song was called Charon, or Sharon. I think it's Charon, actually. It sounds very similar. I mean, right from the beginning, King just comes out with this insane falsetto that kind of sets the mood, and then we go into a very brooding rhythm. It's kind of an interesting approach, and I think that's a thing, actually. Now, track number 7, number 3 from side number 2 is Welcome Princess of Hell. However, I have heard that the actual name of this song is Welcome Princes, as in prince, as in multiple of them, not one singular princess. I don't know. Every release I've seen has said Welcome Princess of Hell, but I think Wikipedia said the song is actually called Princes of Hell. I don't know. I'm just going to talk about the song as it is. Much like Night of the Unborn, it starts off with a very crunching guitar riff at the beginning. Down, no, no, no. Down, no, no, no. Down, no, no, no. And to be honest, this is probably the most straightforward song on this album. This one sounds the most like traditional heavy metal out of everything on here. And that's fine for what it is, but at the same time, I gotta say, I think this is the weakest song on here. It just doesn't really leave much of a mark on me as maybe some of the other ones do. I mean, it's still a great song and everything, but I think it doesn't quite measure up to what came before it. But still, you know, pretty solid number. I'll still listen to it. Then we have To One Far Away, which is an instrumental. This is something King Diamond would start doing a lot with his solo career. He would have like maybe a minute or so instrumental just thrown in there. And it's very soft, but it's also very eerie. I mean, again, King Diamond comes in with his vocals very early on. He's just like, woo, woo. And I did that totally wrong, but I think it is kind of a mood establisher, if that makes any sense. And it's a great segue into the album closer, Come to the Sabbath, which I'm sure you have pretty much recognized by this point, is about a satanic ritual. We have a nice little intro, which is going, come, come to the Sabbath, down by the ruined bridge. Witches and demons are coming, just follow the magic call. And yeah, it just starts going right out of the gate, and I think it's a pretty decent intro, but then it just stops very early on, and we just have some dono, 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 and more harpsichord, actually. This is something he would utilize much later in his career, actually, in his solo career and on future Merciful Fate albums. And then the entire thing just starts picking up in a very, very fast, very, very aggressive rhythm, and we basically have a chorus where he's just going, come to the Sabbath, 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 wow, wow. Now come to the Sabbath! And I think it's pretty catchy, actually. This is another one that King wrote himself, much like The Oath. And I think that he did a very good job here. And this is probably one of his most well-known songs. It came up a lot in concert. It came up a lot even during his solo career. And so this is definitely a Merciful Fate classic. But then at the end, we have a little interlude where we once again get that very eerie harpsichord, and then things just start picking up once again, and we have a pretty decent outro of the song where, again, it's starting to pick up a little bit, and the entire thing ends with King Diamond going, "My sweet Satan, you are the one, you are the one, you are the one, you are the one, you are the one." And it just ends like that with him fading out going, "You are the one." Now, I have heard a rumor that on the vinyl, when he's doing that little demonic outro, on the vinyl, it just repeats that over and over and over again. Now, granted, guys, this is not an original press. This is a remastered version. I have not heard the original press. But on this edition, no, he doesn't. The song just ends just like it does on the CD. It doesn't keep repeating. So, sorry to burst your bubble, but it looks like that is nothing more than a myth. Now, back in 2022, I may have alluded to this earlier, but I had the privilege and the pleasure of seeing Merciful Fate for the very first time in concert. I think this was the very first time they had played together in 23 years. And the lineup was pretty close to what it was the last time they had played in 1999. The only difference was the bass player. But anyways, they heavily represented this album in their set list. We did hear A Dangerous Meeting. We did hear The Oath. In fact, The Oath is what he kicked it off with the intro and everything. It was amazing. And we did hear Come to the Sabbath. I would have liked to have heard Desecration of Souls. I would have liked to have heard Nightmare, but I am very happy with what we got. And by the way, my favorite from side 2 is probably The Oath. If not, it's Come to the Sabbath. But do I recommend this album? Well, if you're squeamish, if you're very religious, it's probably best that you kind of steer away from this one because it might be too much for you. It's not that I'm saying the album is bad. I'm saying it might be not your cup of tea. But if you have no problem with demonic, satanic, crazy stuff, I highly recommend this album. This is a great extreme album. This is a great black metal album. And I think it is phenomenal. I think the production is good. I think the sound is good. And as always, King Diamond is just giving it his all and just being an absolute madman. And I think this is a really great album. This was one of my favorite albums when I was a kid, around 16 or 17 or so. I played this thing over and over and over again, and I just had a blast with it. And so for that, I do recommend Don't Break the Oath. Now, unfortunately, the band would break up after this album. Apparently, Hank Shermann wanted to take things in a different direction. He wanted to make more of a pop rock album for their third album. Why would you ever want to make a pop rock album after you just pledged your devotion to Satan? I don't get it. But anyways, that did not sit well with the rest of the band. And instead of just kicking out Hank Shermann or letting him go on his merry way, they basically rebranded the band into a King Diamond solo band. And it was also very, very successful. And I have talked about that before on this channel. So anyways, thank you all very much for joining me tonight. Next time, we're going to take a look as a band comes alive. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.